This is the Storypunks podcast, a show where we talk about all the punks, so steampunk, dieselpunk, cyberpunk, and all the other punks. I'm your host, Cindy Grigg. This is episode 25, a continuation of my conversation with Gail Carriger. I'm so excited to share this section with you. Gail's going to talk about marketing. She's going to talk about the tools she uses to get stuff done, and we're also going to talk about the craft of writing a little bit, especially at the very beginning when a caller presents a question to Gail. So, by the way, if you are interested in sending in your pre-recorded audio or just calling the show phone line where you can record your question or comment for one of my guests, then I absolutely love that. It adds a really important dimension to these conversations. So you're always welcome to do that. The way you'll know who's coming on the show is to sign up for the Storypunks newsletter. It's really easy. Just go to storypunks.world/newsletter. For my personal update, Hives of the Halcyon, which is book one in my time travel thriller series, and it's anchored in the 1920s, so it is a decopunk series. It is available for pre-order, so this is the first book in my Salt Sheen Paradox series, and my aviatrix character, Moxie, goes on a flight where she ends up in a different time and place and finds out she's been sucked into some time portals on the Earth's salt flats, and there's a network of them. It's something that a lot of people want to control. So there is a conspiracy, and she does go to all these different time periods, and they're punked versions of those times. And so it's definitely what we talk about on this show. I hope it's interesting to a lot of you. And yes, it's up for pre-order, which means that you can buy it and then it pops up when it's available, and it means that you're buying it at a discount in the case of my books. So I always offer it for cheaper during the pre-order period, and that just means that you can, jump into the series, see if you like it, and I hope that you do. It's been so much fun to write, and I'm really looking forward to writing the next books in the series. So when you go to my site, cindygrigg.com, you'll also notice there is another series. So this is a completely different world, not connected in any way, but it is called Peacock Levine and the Ethereal Fates of Naught. And it's not with two T's, because in Norse mythology, that is Thor's grandmother. And this is a series that it's urban fantasy. So I have Norse mythological creatures, artifacts, people show up in the early 19th century. It's a steampunked version of that time. And it's just so fun to incorporate these characters and things that we don't always see when we go see a more mainstream, Thor movie or whatever. And those are great too, but it's been so fun to see the parallels between this 19th century world and their world, and I focus on the Valkyries. So the first book in this series is called Piccadilly Valkyrie, and Piccadilly, as you probably know, is a street in London. So yes, if you are interested in one or both of these series, please go to cindygrigg.com, CINDYGRIGG.com. So Audible is sponsoring this episode of the Storypunks podcast. I talk about Audible a lot, especially when I have guests on the show who have wonderful audiobooks. I talked about this a little bit last episode, how you can go to my running list of punk-related titles, and Gail Carriger's work is definitely on that list. So go check it out. It's at storypunks.world/audible. It's a way to be hands-free. I know we're all super busy, and it's a way to really get an extra dimension of performance. So even if you've read Gail's work, which I know a lot of people have who are listening to this show, you can still get this new experience. You can hear the words in a new way. And I absolutely love the dimension that audio brings. Okay, so one last thing, I have been working on a different side project, and this is something that's really important to me as a creator. And since we're talking about tools today, we're talking about marketing and just being able to get stuff done, I really want to talk about my favorite productivity tool, and it's really timely because I've just released an announcement about some upcoming courses in this area. It is Dictation. So I completely nerd out over this. It's because without being able to speak my writing, there's no way I would be finishing some of these works in progress that I've been trying to finish for years. It really has become this amplifier, this lever that allows me to lift more word count than I normally could. Do you like the analogies? But I really am passionate about it because I work full time. I know a lot of people listening to this podcast do, and you're wondering, why do I never get stuff done? Or maybe it's just me that feels that way. I know it's not, though. This is really common to creators and writers. And if you are struggling to find time, this is a way where, you can get the most out of your time. It does take some time to learn dictation, and it's a skill, and there are technical limitations. So early on in this episode, we talk about some of those limitations and why it can be frustrating for people to jump into dictation. It really is the kind of thing where you just look at your situation, make a decision, and in this episode, we do go through some of the considerations to help you do that. As I said, it's the only reason I'm getting stuff done. So if this sounds interesting to you, then I hope you'll go check out theproductiveauthor.com. And that's where you can sign up and get notifications or check out the resources that I have. There's an ebook, and you can also learn through these courses. And signing up ahead of time for the courses means that you'll be locked in for the discount. They'll be rolling out shortly. And so it's just a way to make sure you get that discounted rate. Again, just go to theproductiveauthor.com. Okay, so without further ado, let's get right into part 2 of my conversation with Gail Carriger. If you haven't checked out her site, gailcarriger.com, she also has other blogs as well, but check that out and you can connect to everything. And you'll see how connected she is to her readers. And you can check out her newsletter, and you can, it's called the Chirrup. You can sign up for it there. And you can see what an awesome job she does at producing content and being consistent. And then you go to her social channels. She's super engaged, so inspiring. There's so much I learn from every time I visit her site. So definitely go check that out, and definitely check out any of her new books that you have not jumped in with. So we're going to start out with a phone line question.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. My question is for Gail. Your books are so lighthearted and witty, and I just really enjoy them. I want to say thank you for that. They're so much fun for me to read. And my question is, even though your stories have this appearance, this feeling of being effortless, I know from my own experience creating art that writing them probably isn't as easy as it seems. So what advice do you have for me as an artist as far as the trudging hard work to getting that done without losing the light, excited, happy quality that comes through so well in your work? Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. It's awesome that you had a question for me, and thanks for your compliment. So I guess the biggest piece of advice that I have to give for all artists, I think in general, especially at the very beginning of your project, is not my own advice. It comes from my dear friend Mer Lafferty, and she says you must give yourself permission to suck. And that's the quickest, best, and easiest route, I believe, to a kind of breezy, relaxed product, for lack of a better word, which is to say, if you just tell yourself every time you sit down to draw or to write or whatever, that it's okay to do badly, that no one has to see it until you've gone and fixed it later, then that little perfectionist that I think many of us have in the back of our head just lets go and lets you do it. The other piece of advice I specifically have for authors comes from my own battle with perfectionism, which is I do not allow myself to reread while I'm in the process of writing a rough draft. So The only thing I can reread is the section that I wrote the day before, which is usually about 2,000 words. So I'm allowed to go back and reread that. just to get myself back into the voice and remind myself where I am in the story. And then I have to write the new section. And then the next day I can reread that one. But I can't go back to the beginning because otherwise I feel like a lot of creatives get into this cycle of perfecting the very beginning part, whether that's the first couple of chapters or whether that's one corner of a painting or whatever it is, and then they never finish. So for me, the trick for myself is knowing that no one else is going to read it, so it can be as bad as I want. The whole point is just getting the words on the page, because for me that is the hardest part. And also not allowing myself to go back and edit until the entire thing is written.
Oh, I love that advice, because it really is a common thing for writers to just beat that beginning until it's like lifeless.
Yeah, and it becomes that way. It gets lifeless and overworked through your quest for perfectionism. And I think other kinds of art can have that same issue. And it's rough, especially if you are writing comedy, because then you also lose the humor. So, but it's okay, because like I said, no one has to read it. And here's the great secret, is that it never sucks as much as you think.
Totally.
It's never as bad as you think it is. You'll go back and be like, oh, this isn't so bad. This is fine.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, well, in preparing for this interview, I learned something new about you, and you've already told us that you stand when you write. But since we're talking about writing advice, I've heard also that you're also interested in dictation. Now, I don't know where you've gone in your journey on that, but I also nerd out over dictation. So what has your journey with that been like so far?
It's been really rough, honestly. I am a dyed-in-the-wool Mac user, which I know there are many people out there now scoffing at me, but literally my first computer ever was an LC2. So I've always had an Apple computer of some kind or another, and I think I'm just like too trained into their UI. So Dragon, which is the only really good dictation software out there, just does not perform well on a Mac.
It really doesn't.
Actually, it really sucks, and it's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
I put some concerted effort into researching whether I should just buy a tiny little PC just to dictate into, and I was like, this is getting insane. This is getting ridiculous. So it turns out that the dictation software that you have through iOS, if you have a mobile device through Apple, or just on Apple's regular computer, is not that bad.
It's not.
But it is not trainable, and it is not good for fantasy or anything or sci-fi or anything tangential to that, where you have a lot of weird made-up words and strange names, and you can't train it. So what I do is dictate a lot of email and texts and respond, real world kind of stuff, in order to save my hands to type fiction.
Yeah.
But I will still occasionally, I'll dictate a scene or a description or something into my phone, especially if I'm on the go. But it doesn't translate very well. It is so much faster, and I think I'm just at the point where I was really worried initially that because verbalizing fiction, it uses a different part of your brain than typing fiction. I was afraid that something would be lost, but I don't think that's the case at this juncture. So I think I'm just kind of in a holding pattern, hoping that Dragon eventually or a competitor comes along and gives us a really good trainable dictation software that would work for fiction. But as it stands, I am planning on putting some of my nonfiction presentations that I kind of do on the down low. I don't, as an author, I don't really talk about here we talk about Gothic lit and stuff like that. But
yeah.
There are other things that really, really interest me. For example, the heroine's journey is really fascinating to me, and it's something that I use a lot, but there isn't a really good book for writers on that subject, as opposed to the hero's journey. And yes, they're completely different. So I'm kind of loosely toying with the idea of eventually putting that together as a deck for presentations, and then taking what I learned from giving those presentations and perfecting it and turning it into a nonfiction. And that I could probably dictate. But my fiction is still not dictatable, and it's a little sad for me because I could go so much faster if I could only dictate.
Oh, I know. But it is tricky, and the technology isn't there. It's also weird. I've heard stats that most writers are actually on Apple devices.
Yes.
And so it's really bizarre. Also, it's really bizarre that Dragon and these companies, they have focused on business people, and all these different job titles, but not writers. It's really weird. But
it is.
I guess it's understandable. They're going for different markets, but yeah.
Well, it's a little like the great battle with Word. I don't know if, because, the writing software Word is not designed for fiction writers. It is specifically designed for business writing, and I guess, nonfiction writing, but shorter form writing. And it gets buggier and buggier and worse the longer your manuscript is, which is just ridiculous. And it's quite frankly the worst program for writing a fiction novel. It's just I can't even describe. So what I'm a Scrivener user, but it did take Scrivener to bust the zeitgeist. I am the quintessential Scrivener user. They couldn't have written a program more perfect for me.
Awesome.
Because I write modularly. I'm an outliner. Everything about it, I'm very visual when I write. So everything about Scrivener and the layout and its notes and its the way it works. For anybody who cares, it's kind of like a combination of an outlining program and old-fashioned hypertext, cards.
And note cards,
and note cards, 3x5 visual, color cards and writing. But it allows you to be very organic in how you conceive of a manuscript, and it's wonderful. And the moment in the process where I have to switch back to Word, because for all of us writers, you have that moment because you can't send Scrivener to your editor. You end up having to send a document. It's just, I am reminded how much I hate Word. And I feel like Dragon is at that point too. So right now, Dragon is sort of catering to the wider business world. And the Scrivener version of Dragon hopefully will eventually come along that is basically designed for us, for writers.
I totally agree.
And then we will cheer. There will be cheers.
Yes. And it's also tricky because you wonder, do I get into dictation now where I have to say all the commands like period, comma, or do I wait? Because what if you learn that and then you have to untrain yourself? I mean, it's just kind of in a weird place right now.
It is very much so. And my advice, such as it is, would be to do something a little bit like I'm doing, which is should have do some dictation, but mostly just do it for your nonfiction life so that you can save your wrists and hands and carpal tunnel for your fiction life. And at least so I did have that hang up where I was like, I don't know if I could ever write with my mouth because it's different. It feels different. It's not typing, Mm-hmm. And I'm totally getting over that just by dictating emails and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, no, that'll be fine. I'll be fine. So I'm excited about it and I hope it happens.
Yep. I've totally fallen off the cliff. I'm a nerd for it, but I can recognize it's not there in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like I said, I seriously put thought into finding the right microphone and in order to And I was like, oh, Dragon's just making it too hard. It's just because I use Scrivener. So even so, I would have to then transfer whatever I dictated out of whatever program I dictated it back into Scrivener. And it's just, it's just a nightmare. So
Someday. Okay, well, in a similar vein, from a marketing standpoint, I really admire what you've implemented across your author website and social platforms, promotions, other marketing channels, and funnels. When I've heard that you've also mentioned that you're a data nerd,
I am.
What types of advice do you have for creatives? Because a lot of times people can be really disconnected from that when they're working on a creative project.
Yes.
So marketing and punk related works. What do you have for us?
It is hard. And it is hard partly because it is difficult for me to understand. I don't honestly have very much patience for writers or artists or whoever who just like kind of throw their hands up in panic and are like, I don't wanna. And you're just like, oh, this is the way the world works. You have to acclimatize.
Stop it. Yeah.
But part of the reason that I lack sympathy is because I am, I love it. I genuinely like it. I've always been like big into data and stats and organization and spreadsheets and like, and that's because I'm an archaeologist. It's like archaeologists are the logisticians of the social sciences, right? It's all we do to make vast amounts of data and like process it in various different ways and talk about ancient cultures. We're also the weird sort of social element, right? The anthropologists and other social scientists tend to be observers, like very good outside observers or one-on-one or whatever. And archaeologists are like, well, I have a team of 50 people in a foreign land. I have to feed them. I have to make sure they don't piss off the locals. So it's definitely like you should see. I've always been an outliner, and I'm just super organized. Like some of my fantasy worlds that are remain unpublished are like color coded, like Excel spreadsheets of which characters are where and who's encountering whom and that sort of stuff. So it does come sort of naturally to me. Although the other part of this is that, of course, I will get on my high horse, for example, about like wearing professional clothing when you're going to meet the public. Like if you're an author and you're going to a signing or something, I'm like, you have to dress a little nicely. I'm sorry. And that ties into this as well, because essentially all this is, in a very geeky term, is hacking human interaction.
Oh, yeah.
And that isn't that what we do as artists and creators, right? Again, we're back to this, like the whole goal, I'm assuming, is to manipulate emotions in your audience, in your watcher, in your reader, whoever they are. And that's also what marketing is. I know.
Yeah. They don't have to be in separate camps. I love that. And I love the passion that you have for it.
It's really fun. Like, I'm like, well, if I do a post like this, what happens? If I use this image, what happens? And I just like watch, ooh, that one gets a lot. That one doesn't get as many clicks. You're not a good little post, Like, I'm just like, oh, that's what people wanted today? Okay, people, by all means, let's vote on our favorite size of noodle, whatever it is. And it's just really fun. It does help that I do genuinely enjoy it. I have struggled from the get-go, I guess you could say, to build myself a community of the type of people who read my books.
Yeah.
Who are also kind of the type of people that I think I would love to socialize with and go shopping with and hang out with, And so my corners of the internet, so to speak, tend to be these people talking about octopi and getting excited about a new flavor of tea or whatever it is. And it makes it enjoyable for me to get online because I know that's what my interactions are going to be. So that does definitely make a difference. What you write or create, I think, does make a difference. But the steampunk community is really cool in my experience. Like, they are really awesome and open and cheerful and excited about what they do and sharing new ideas and stuff. So so I have been very lucky. That is the other side of it. But I also do enjoy it because I like manipulating people. I'm an author. I'm secretly a Machiavellian,
Yeah, totally. Well, I think that's a really good takeaway, that doing it in a way that you enjoy, it may make it slower to start, but it pays off because then you get to enjoy what you're doing.
Yes. I mean, I had a lovely young lady come up to me recently and be like, I just have really bad social anxiety, and that includes online stuff, but I'm an author, and I just kind of don't know what to do. And I was like, well, Instagram is for you. Like,
totally.
There's a platform that's waiting for you, no matter what it is that you're struggling with. Or, I'm like, you just post pretty pictures. You don't have to talk to anybody ever.
Totally.
So yeah, that's the other side of the equation, is you don't have to follow the mold. Like, just because everybody's on Facebook or whatever it is, you don't have to do that. There are totally other options, and our community, the reader community, the steampunk community is niched everywhere all over the internet, and you can find them. I swear, I promise.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of the community, and I'm sad that this is the last question, but we all have lives. So, what does the world need more steampunk for? And maybe it doesn't, or what's your take on it? I get different answers on this, and it's really fascinating because our community has benefited so much. But what about the world at large?
I feel like steampunk had the aesthetic movement in particular, the gathering of steampunk in particular, had a very specific style early on in the beginning in 2007, 10 years ago now, when the very first sort of steampunk conventions were starting up. But I feel like what has happened since then is it's kind of become this sort of percolating, insidious thing and gone out and evolved away from that. Much like the Gothic literary movement, actually, like steampunk has sort of gone off and like developed a relationship with, sci-fi in this corner, or like some sort of steampunk, space opera over here, and then it's gotten way more diverse. It's changed quite a bit, and I think it's been a good thing. It has lost some of its identity in a way that makes it easily recognized by outsiders as a result of this. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely a feeling, I think, amongst some of the originators of the aesthetic movement community that it's been polluted or discolored, or it's not what it used to be. But I think that's sort of the nature of any art form or musical form or anything is to sort of change and evolve and split apart. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know that that's really an answer. What does it need? I mean, in order to become kind of prevalent in the mind of the general public, steampunk has to have a major successful television show or motion picture. Mm-hmm. And it's just never happened. We've had sort of tangential things, like Howl's Moving Castle for younger crowds, or I don't know,
love it,
Wild Wild West or something. But they've never been big hits. They've always not done very well, like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or His Dark Materials, The Golden Compass. So they've had like sort of strong steampunk elements, but they've never been a huge deal. And we need like the Steampunk 007 or equivalent, the Steampunk Transformers, or the equivalent thereof. And do we want that? I don't know. Do we want that?
I know. Do we want it to be niche instead? Yeah.
Yeah. Or do we want it to remain this sort of tiny corner of popular and exciting thing? I don't know. It's a really good question. But yeah, to me, that's what it needs if it wants to break out of just being a part of, in my case, the science fiction and fantasy community. But I'm not sure we're going to get that. And I don't feel like that's where we're headed at the moment. That's for sure. I think we're definitely headed into this sort of dispersal, like steampunk elements are going to just sort of creep up and pop in and show up in Castle or, that kind of thing.
Yep. Oh, well, thank you so much. This has been an absolute delight for me as someone who admires your work, and also how you've handled, the marketing side and just how you connect with your audience. It's so genuine and so impactful. I think that's really unique. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think it helps that I'm enjoying myself so much.
Yes.
I think that's I left archaeology in really good, in a really good space. So it's been a long time now, but I could probably still go back to it if I really, really wanted to. Yeah. And it's kind of nice because I've always been like, if I stop having fun, then I'll go back to archaeology, which is only slightly less fun, frankly. It's still I still love it so much.
Totally.
So yeah, I wouldn't do this if I weren't genuinely enjoying myself. And I think that shows, I hope that shows.
It totally does. And why is that so hard for a lot of us to do? I don't know. It's very cool that you've been able to sustain it and really present that. It's a real gift to everyone. So thank you.
I think, I wouldn't if people weren't reading me, weren't enjoying it, then wouldn't happen.
That's right. Okay. Well, where can people find you? I know we have a mix of people listening or watching, and basically where can they find your latest work? I know a lot of people already know different places, but if you could give us an overview. Sure.
So you can just Google Gail Carriger, and it's spelt the Gail way, Carriger. And or various misspellings will probably also turn it up. And my website will come up. There's a contact page, which is everywhere I am on the internet, but I am pretty much Gail Carriger everywhere. So if you want like pithy little chatting, mostly about sort of the writer life, then that's what Twitter is for. I do a lot of like steampunk stuff and share images and all that sort of thing on Facebook. And then I'm also on Instagram and Pinterest and everywhere else you could possibly imagine, including YouTube.
Yeah.
So, I have fun, and I've kind of figured out ways to structure, because again, back to the being organized, is to structure my day so I don't waste too much time on social media.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'm everywhere, and I am pretty responsive in most of those locations. So if you say hi, I will usually reply back as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And
she's so much fun to follow. So, and another thing I would love to plug is her Chirrup. So that's the newsletter. And it's such a great way to know ahead of time stuff that's going on, but also it's just an extension of all the wonderful Gail Carriger-ness. So.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I put a lot of thought and effort into that. It's only once a month, so I'm pretty careful to make sure that it's fun and silly and ridiculous and has pretty pictures and stuff.
Yes.
And that's like I do giveaways, and that's where all of my secrets are revealed. Like I keep it very elite. And it's great fun.
It is. And it's one of the few newsletters that I'm like, yes, I have to get to that right now. So,
oh, thank you. What a lovely thing to say. That's so sweet.
It's just true. Okay. Well, thank you again, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Have a lovely night.
Oh my goodness. I just wish this interview could go on and on. But as mentioned, we all have work to work on, creative projects to continue with. And I hope this has inspired you. I know that I was very inspired to revisit this even while I was editing, and of course while I was actually interviewing Gail Carriger. So I appreciate her time, and just as one last reminder, please check out the 20-Minute Delay podcast. She hosts that with Piper J. Drake, and it's a wonderful way to find out about travel tips and gadgets and all the good stuff. So don't forget to go check that out after this show. And one last reminder to please head to cindygrigg.com, CINDYGRIGG.com, to check out my fiction. And also, if you're interested in how to dictate, please check out theproductiveauthor.com for those courses or my ebook. And yes, good luck with everything you're working on. I will talk with you again in 2 weeks.